India has fired missiles into Pakistan in an escalation of the dispute between the neighboring nuclear powers. Pakistan's military says at least 26 civilians were killed. India says it struck infrastructure used by militants linked to last month's attack against tourists in Indian-administered Kashmir. Pakistan claims to have shot down 5 Indian warplanes.
A collapsed minaret lies on top of a mosque in Pakistan-administered Kashmir, destroyed by shelling. As local residents lay to rest the victims of the attack, their shock has turned to outrage.
An imam, a worker in the mosque, and a local man were there at the time. They've been martyred. May God accept them. God willing, we will take revenge. I want to assure Pakistan's armed forces that all the people in Pakistan-administered Kashmir and in the whole of Pakistan stand with them. Long live Pakistan's army.
In Pakistan's Punjab region too, large crowds gathered to mourn more victims of Indian airstrikes. Pakistan has called the strikes unjustified, claiming civilian areas were hit, and says it will fight back.
Pakistan reserves the right and will respond to this aggression at a time, place and means of our own choice.
But India says the coordinated strikes targeted terror camps, claiming they were a necessary response to last month's attack in Indian-administered Kashmir that killed 26 Hindu tourists, which it attributes to militant groups linked to Pakistan.
Despite a fortnight having passed since the attacks, there has been no demonstrable step from Pakistan to take action against the terrorist infrastructure on its territory or on territory under its control. Instead, all it has indulged in are denials and allegations.
Delhi says that the preemptive action was necessary to deter any further attacks by Pakistani-based terror groups. And residents on the streets of the capital agree that their country was right to retaliate against the April 22nd attack.
This time our response should make them think 100 times before they even consider doing this again, and I think this time we should take back Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, which is ours.
Those who committed the attack must be punished, but they shouldn't punish the whole of Pakistan, only those responsible, because it's a political game.
There is mounting international concern about the latest escalation. The UN has warned that the world cannot afford a military confrontation between India and Pakistan.
For more now, I want to bring in Chietigj Bajpaee, a senior research fellow at South Asia at Chatham House. He joins us now from London. It's good to have you with us. There are a lot of fears over the potential for further escalation between India and Pakistan, two nuclear powers. How do you see things developing over the next few days?
Well, it is clearly a very precarious position. India is seeking to control the escalation ladder through these precision strike operations. So it's very similar in nature to what happened in 2016 and 2019 when India launched so-called surgical strikes and airstrikes in response to another set of terrorist attacks which occurred in Kashmir. It has noted in its statements that it's targeted terrorist camps, not military facilities. It's referred to its operations as focused, measured, and non-escalatory in nature. So clearly, it's trying to ensure that the conflict stays below the threshold of a wider regional or even a potential nuclear conflict.
The domestic political constituencies in both countries, they appear to be fired up about these recent exchanges. How big of a factor will that be in what comes next?
Clearly, that is a consideration. It remains to be seen if these, this tit-for-tat military exchanges helps to appease both countries' domestic political constituencies and their hyper-nationalist foreign policies. I mean, there are already some indications that the situation has escalated beyond what we saw back in 2016 and 2019, both in terms of India's actions and Pakistan's response. There have been reports, not yet verified, of that Indian aircraft and drones have been shot down. India has conducted civil defense drills across the country, preparing for a potentially wider conflict. So there is a very real risk of a accidental escalation. At the same time, we've seen limited external pressure on either country to try and restrain their actions. And it comes at a time when both countries have developed a more assertive military posture. India under the current Narendra Modi government, and Pakistan under its current army chief, Asim Munir.
What do you think would have the highest potential to bring both sides back from the brink? Do you see it as being external pressure, diplomacy?
Yeah, I mean, in the past, the U.S., for instance, has played quite a significant role in helping to de-escalate tensions between both countries, most notably during the Kargil conflict in 1999. But on this occasion, what we're seeing is that for other countries, third parties, they've not condoned India and Pakistan's actions, but nor have they openly condemned it. Trump has noted in a quite a nonchalant way that it's a shame what's happened, and he's referred to India and Pakistan that they'll sort out their tensions in one way or the other. So I think there is a limited appetite for the U.S. to play a more hands-on role in helping to de-escalate tensions, and I think in this context, it's helpful to look at the role of other countries, beyond the usual suspects. Countries like the Gulf Arab states, for instance, what role they could potentially play. And these are countries that have good relations with both India and Pakistan. The UAE in particular helped to broker a ceasefire along the line of control, which demarcates Indian and Pakistan administered Kashmir in 2021.
I know you've written extensively about China's role in the region. How do you see China factoring in amid the escalation between India and Pakistan?
Yeah, I mean, China has called for restraint on both parties. It has called for conflicts to cease, but at the same time, clearly it has leaned in Pakistan's in favor in terms of its position on the conflict. It's referred to Pakistan as its all ironclad friend, its all-weather ally. And obviously, this also needs to be looked at in a broader context. China has provided accounts for over 80% of Pakistan's arms imports over the last 5 years. China has also resisted or blocked India's efforts to designate Pakistan-based terrorist organizations as global terrorists at the United Nations. And China, of course, is also actually a party to the Kashmir dispute. India and China had border skirmishes and tensions back in 2020 in an area of what is called Eastern Ladakh Aksai Chin, which is not very far from where these current instabilities have taken place. And Pakistan also handed over a piece of territory in Kashmir to China in 1963. So in reality, China's position is far from neutral.
Mr. Bajpaee, we appreciate your time and your valuable insights tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
We're joined now by counterterrorism expert Ajai Sahni. He's the director of the New Delhi-based Institute for Conflict Management. Welcome to DW, sir. Thank you for your time. These attacks by India have now further increased the prospect of an all-out war with Pakistan. Do you think that is something that either side is prepared for?
I don't think there's any possibility, in fact, of any such war or wider conflagration taking place. Neither country has actually shown any inclination, apart from some wild rhetoric from a few quarters, that suggests that they are willing to accept escalation. In fact, after this incident, both sides have emphasized in different language, in different ways, that they seek not to escalate this conflict. And I think that is something that both sides are really fairly committed to, because neither side can afford an escalation.
So if we look at what India just did, I mean, what did India gain from this kind of military operation? What was its aim?
Well, the aim is supposedly to deter and to end Pakistani sponsorship of terrorism. Will it actually do so is disputable. I would suggest that it is not going to have any significant deterrent value. it would, of course, message to Pakistan that the lines have been redrawn, that provocations will not go entirely unpunished. I think that is a cost that Pakistan factors into its sponsorship of terrorism. More importantly, I think this entire discourse on both sides of the border is more oriented towards domestic audiences rather than any realistic effort to alter the course of terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir. Basically, both sides need to claim a small victory for themselves, and then they'll sort of walk back into what you could call is the default setting for both the countries.
Would there have been, would there have been an alternative response for India in this situation? I mean, should it have done something different?
It could have done many things differently. This is not the first time people have been killed in India by Pakistan-backed terrorists. In fact, we've had just 50 fatalities this year. Last year, we had just 127 fatalities in Jammu and Kashmir as a result of Pakistan-backed terrorism. There was a time in 2001 when we had 4,011 fatalities in just 1 year. So why didn't we go to war at that juncture? Basically, the build-up to this incident was an orchestration. This was done for domestic political audiences. It is not done because there is an imperative of justice, because this is the first time civilians have been killed, the first times Hindus have been selectively targeted. All these things have happened in the past. Mm-hmm. So to pretend that this is something completely unprecedented, out of the blue, and demanded an overwhelming response is, I think, a falsehood, quite simply.
And yet Pakistan has now vowed to retaliate. You say that you don't expect this conflict to keep spiralling. What do you expect to happen next, then?
I would expect something symbolic on the side of from the Pakistani side as well. We have now claimed that we've hit these 9 targets across. We will demonstrate that this is a great victory for the ruling party. Pakistan will probably do something across the border as well. They've already claimed that they've knocked down 5 of our planes with little or no evidence, but that will sort of clarify over the coming days as to whether they have actually been able to inflict damage. But at the end of the day, it is important for them to be able to go back to their constituencies, their populations, and tell them that we've done something great. Now, reality will have very little to do with these claims. There has to be some kind of a demonstration, and then captive media on both sides will spin the narrative that they are really asked to spin by the people who are in power.
Yeah, if we can talk about the public opinion, I mean, a significant section of the Indian public was demanding a military response to the Kashmir attack. How will they feel if Pakistan hits back?
Well, first of all, that public opinion was orchestrated. It was led by captive media and captive groups on the social media. Now, once you create an enormous expectation through this orchestrated campaign that something is going to be done and Pakistan needs to be punished, if they feel that punishment is inadequate, there will obviously be a sense of disappointment.
Mm-hmm. We'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much for your time. Counter-terrorism expert Ajai Sahni in New Delhi. Thank you. We are joined now by Maleeha Lodhi, Pakistan's former ambassador to the UN. Welcome to DW. It's a pleasure to have you on the programme. Pakistan says it will respond at a time and place of its own choosing and that they have begun a measured but forceful response. Can I start by asking you, how do you expect Pakistan to respond to this?
I think Pakistan's calculation is that every so many years, India attacks and comes into mainland Pakistan, either by launching airstrikes or by lobbing missiles across the border, which is, of course, a violation both of its sovereignty as well as international law. So Pakistan is concerned with re-establishing deterrence so that these attacks every 3 years or 2 years don't become the new normal. Now, the nature of how Pakistan will retaliate and the scope of its retaliation, we don't know. But certainly, Pakistan is readying itself to launch a reprisal against India.
India's been very clear in why it has done this. It says that 7 of the sites it targeted were used by Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed. These are both Islamist groups designated terrorist organisations by the UN, and India blames Lashkar-e-Taiba for the Kashmir attack a few weeks ago. So, given that, isn't India's response understandable?
It's understandable if you apply the law of the jungle, but it's not understandable if you want countries to adhere to and observe international law. The rule of law is flouted by such actions. India produced not a shred of evidence to show who carried out the attack, which of course we all condemned. It was a terrible attack in Kashmir. But without producing any evidence to say that we are going to just attack our neighbor who happens to have nuclear capability, I mean, it's an irresponsible act. It's an action that should not have taken place. Instead, India should have accepted Pakistan's offer for a neutral investigation into what happened, into that terror incident, and then a way should have been found to address the issue. But to act unilaterally, militarily, in a nuclear environment is, I think, extreme irresponsibility.
The US and others have long accused Pakistan of backing or providing haven to groups that are deemed terrorist in nature. Do you agree that Pakistan should be doing more to combat militant groups?
Pakistan has suffered a great deal due to terrorism. Even today, as I speak, it's battling terrorist groups that come in from their safe havens in Afghanistan. It's battling them in 2 of its western provinces. So, Pakistan has long been a victim of terrorism. Now, as far as the international response is concerned, I think we should for a moment consider that, because internationally, the world community has been reacting with a great deal of alarm and concern about what's happening between India and Pakistan in the latest crisis. And we also see behind the scenes diplomacy by the United States that has got involved in trying to separate the 2 sides. We've heard Secretary of State Marco Rubio make phone calls to both Indian and Pakistani officials. The aim, of course, is to try to diffuse the situation. Remember that in the past 20, 25 years, in about 5 crises that we've had between India and Pakistan, it was almost always the United States that came in to diffuse the crisis. So I think it's going to try to do that again. But again, it'll depend on when and how Pakistan will respond. And then perhaps after that, the United States may play a role to end the crisis.
As you say, a lot depends on how Pakistan responds. Delhi says its actions have been focused, measured and non-escalatory. And yet there are, of course, fears, warnings of the risk of an all-out war in this situation. Do you share those fears?
Well, look, in a nuclear environment, when one country attacks the other, naturally, then the risk of an uncontrolled escalatory cycle heightens. There's always the chance of miscalculation. And for India to claim that it was very restrained in the way it undertook these strikes and they were very, very controlled, really? You attack civilian targets and leave 26 civilians dead, and that's supposed to be acting responsibly? I mean, that's giving a whole new meaning to the word responsible.
We're going to have to leave it there, but we'd like to thank you so much for your time today. Maleeha Lodhi, Pakistan's former ambassador to the UN. Thank you.